This is Gangs of Sherwood. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well. So this is a cooperative focused experience where you can play it offline if you'd like to by yourself, so that's good for longevity, or play online in a group of up to 4 players. It is a little awkward in getting groups of players together, as everyone kind of fits a specific function. There is like a browser, but there's no, at least from what I noticed or tried to do, like join in progress or anything like that, so it doesn't seem to have a drop-in, drop-out system, which kind of really defeats the purpose of cooperative play like this. At least I kind of feel like it, unless you've got like a group of friends. So what are we getting here? Well, it's a 4K resolution, but it is very aggressively dynamic, like resolution scaling. You can really notice it as some of the scenes look very, very murky, and some of the visual fidelity of this game definitely does dip significantly during the gameplay experiences. So it is targeting 60 FPS. There are definitely performance issues that I noticed, particularly in co-op and in some of the various levels that are present within this game, which is a bit of a disappointment if you are kind of looking for a smooth fluidity game. It's not too bad, but it's definitely something that I think kind of like shows up while you're playing, if that makes sense. Like you could definitely kind of feel the performance issues when they arise. I think you've maybe already seen some of them. It's not like the worst, but it's definitely noticeable, and then you kind of match that with like muddy kind of visuals at times. It just leaves a lot to be desired from the visual side of things. There is also Dolby Atmos support for audio, obviously. So yeah, like I mean, I think it looks okay. It's just sort of not super visually kind of impressive. Like there's a good sense of detail, but you get like pop in, and there's not really a lot to this game too, because I'm just trying to go over the visuals first and foremost. But like you visit some cool fantasy places, and it's just like some of it looks really, really murky to the point that you can't tell the details of things. And there's some cool particle effects and some cool abilities, but yeah, it just doesn't really look that visually impressive. And for something that is like a current gen only title, it does sort of make you wonder why this didn't also get a release for, you know, past gen titles, because it does definitely look like something that would play on there, and also something that kind of looks like it's maybe from like a couple gens ago, honestly, gameplay wise. Are we for real with this guy that's just stuck behind these things? There we go, he's finally dead. What a pain. So the story here is that of Robin Hood. You're like the Robin Hood crew. Everybody's kind of distinct. Actually, one of the strong suits of the game is that each of the characters is like a distinct character. You know, Marian here is kind of a sword fighter. Robin Hood does the bow and arrow. The other guys are kind of like big tough dudes, and they can kind of access different parts of the levels that others can't. And it's very easy going. Like the game itself, it's not very long. Like it is a bit of a twist on Robin Hood, if that makes sense. Like there's a bit more of a mechanical element to it, where the characters and, you know, some of the enemies and stuff like that have some mechanical things going on, which is kind of cool, but they don't really take that too much further. And yeah, it's pretty basic. The story isn't really too intriguing, and honestly, like it was a little hard to keep up with what was going on in the narrative, because it just sort of like jumps along. It's like our city's getting attacked, and then all of a sudden there's a huge trenched resistance that we were leading but we weren't even part of, and you're trying to deal with the sheriff, I guess, but it's not really explained about the sheriff element of it. It's just kind of like, it's a story that's just kind of there in the backdrop. It's told largely through our characters. They have like bits where they're kind of talking to each other, but because basically like you get the dialogue of all the characters no matter who's in the group every single time, it doesn't really lead way to much replayability, because it's just the same sort of like tale. And like the levels themselves, as I was saying, again, to really emphasize that, this is not a very long game. Like it's, I think probably about 4 hours, maybe a little bit longer. There's 3 acts, and each act has 3 missions, and each kind of like act takes about, I want to say, just over an hour or less. Well, some of them are a little longer, some of the later levels, and that's where you get that like 4-hour count. And then there are some extra additional type mission things. So that comes in the form of like a best of bosses kind of extra mission. So you fight the 3 end bosses of the 3 acts. There is the other option where, where's this guy going? The other option where you fight a giant ram thing that's just stuck in one corner, and you just kind of wail on it for a while, like several minutes, and then it dies. And then there's like a survival kind of mode thing, but that's not really too complex, and that's the whole game. I mean, you could go and you could do higher difficulties, I guess, if you'd like to. But yeah, it's very, very light on content. It's one of those games where I'm sort of like, you know, like, honestly, this isn't like a great game. It's really, really boring and sort of lackluster. But it's also a game where I'm kind of like, I feel if this had more of a budget put behind it, and more dev time, and like, I just feel like you could have expanded this outwards into something a little bit more intriguing, because I like the dimensions of the characters, their different abilities, what they do. There's some cool stuff concept-wise in this. It's just like the execution of it isn't like the best, and it just feels very limited in terms of content, which is a huge disappointment. Because yeah, that side content really doesn't do much. There's like side objectives, but it's sort of like you complete a mission and then you get this objective from a side character, and then you go back into another mission that you've already done, and then you go and kill like X amount of this unit, or, you know, deal with this character this time. It's really, really quite lackluster in that regard. And when you finish it the first time, you don't really want to go through it again. Like, honestly, it was about 15 minutes there, like, actually a few minutes into this, I was kind of bored of it. And then by, like, the first hour, I was dreading it. By the second hour, I was just kind of like, oh man, this is just, like, the same enemies over and over and over again. The terrain is slightly changes. Like, I was really struggling to find things that I liked. There are cool puppets. I know that sounds really weird, but the game has like little puppet shows to tell you the story beforehand and afterwards. I thought that was kind of cute, but like, it actually kind of reminds me of Fable Heroes, which is funny, which is like a game with Fable and you have puppets, but like, yeah, it leaves a lot to be desired. You know, so like some good things, you know, I like the characters, you know, they got some laughs. Like the game itself has some laughs. You know, there's some dudes that are sitting there like fishing on every level. I think almost every level. I didn't see them in all of them, but I saw them in most. And they're just kind of like dudes that are like just fishing, and there's a good laugh, and there's like a puppeteer you find on the battlefield, and you know, there's some like comical stuff, and like the characters have some comical bits, a lot of groaning bits, but like, you know, there is some comical stuff there, but it's just like, yeah, they're cool characters that all have their own flair, style, and sort of upgrades, because you have this big oak kind of base fortress, and there you kind of do your upgrades, so you know, improve your characters to a degree. There's some different outfits you can buy. They kind of cheaped out on me, and they didn't give me the super ultra limited edition of my character, which was a little disappointing, but see, that's the red skin there, so you get like a cool extra glow kind of thing, and yeah, anyways, doesn't matter. Cheaped out on it. but yeah, you could buy some like outfits with coins, because you're earning gold as you complete every checkpoint, and then, you know, if you're playing single player, you'll use that gold in order to like resurrect yourself, or if you die, you have to restart like the level or the checkpoint. And there's usually like 3 checkpoints a level, so it is a bit of progress that you lose if you do end up dying. If that makes sense, and not just getting resurrected. So it's kind of like, as I said, I really wanted to like this sort of game, and it can be like a little frustrating a lot of the way, because it's like a lot that they throw at you at times. It definitely does seem like it is meant for more players, but you get cool things, like there's these artifacts. So I kind of collected one from the chest, and the artifacts are like these You like pause here. You can hold so many artifacts, and then if you get gold, you can unlock other slots by paying for it or whatever. And then it's like you get different abilities. So like one of them is enemies get lit on fire, and then they sit there dancing as their feet are on fire, which is pretty funny. And then there's one where it's like sort of you do a higher up defense, or there's a variety of different artifacts. But the thing is like the artifacts reset every like level, as do, oh cool, got an achievement for that, nice. As do basically your character gang levels. So you see on the left hand side there, the top left, it says gang level 3. So that's kind of like you're basically leveling up every time you go about this. So like this level, you know, you start at the beginning, and then you get a checkpoint level 2, and then checkpoint level 3, and so forth. And that is how you are kind of becoming a little bit stronger, and then it resets. So you're just kind of like progressing and then like resetting every single level. And it just sort of is, I don't know, lackluster. To some degree though, when you're playing, there is a little bit of variation. Like there's slightly different paths you can kind of take, but like not enough where you're really like, oh, let's replay this and see something new. And I think that's the biggest disappointment aspect of this, is I was kind of thinking this was going to be something like Left 4 Dead, Vermintide, Darktide, where you kind of do missions and there's like a sense of like replayability to those missions. Whereas this, I was kind of like, even if I wasn't bored out of my mind playing this, and trust me, I really, really tried to like, you know, give this game the best benefit of doubt I could while I was playing it, and it just didn't really necessarily get any better. And it's just, yeah, that's the thing, is like the concept's kind of cool, but I don't even know why it is like, you know, Robin Hood. Like, you could have just done a fantasy set of characters of anything. I don't know if the Robin Hood representation even adds anything, if that makes sense. But yeah, you're just kind of like restarting each level, and you all have like different abilities, and you can see like our character Marian here can like, you know, has like a cool whip thing. She can like throw daggers, throw like a sword axe kind of thing going on here, and you know, and then your teammates, you know, some of them have different things, like some are more range based, and so they all have different stuff, and you can revive each other and go into battle. But like it's just, it's really kind of meh. I think is the biggest thing, is it's a big meh. Like I think there is a point where it's like, if you like this style of gameplay, like what you're seeing, it could kind of be fun. They're always giving me the D. Sometimes I get the C. Ranking is like you're ranked based on, you know, kind of how many hits in a row. You don't really get hit, and you get like a score, and at the end your puppets get a score, and they get sad if they're not as good as the others. But like it is something where I could see like a certain level of like, hey, this is, you know, a deal here for this amount. You might be able to like enjoy it at that kind of point. Like it just seems like a really unfinished game, if that makes any sort of sense. Like it seems like a game where they really should have added more, and it seems like they maybe wanted to add more, and again it comes down to like, I think, budgeting to some degrees. They just weren't given, you know, necessarily the full support to hit that level of quality. And there are some like little bugs here and there, like where the music kind of cuts out, but like it all runs, you know what I mean? Like the whole game plays all the way through. I didn't really have, there was no like progression prevention happening. It's just sort of like, it's hard to get through because it's really mind-numbingly boring. Is the biggest thing. Is it's just like you play it and then you get a feel for it, and then you're like, okay, well it's basically the same thing. And you might be like, oh, well that boss thing looks pretty cool. And it's like, yeah, some of the bosses, they got like these cool robotic kind of things, and you know, they're kind of neat, or big guys with shields, or big guys with axes. They're only as cool though as the first time they're a boss, because then they become like generic enemies you have to fight like 3 or 4 of in the same room sometimes, and it's just kind of is like, oh, okay. And yeah, that's the biggest thing, is even the bosses are like very underwhelming. That's what I'm saying, is like, I don't think this is like a great game. It's kind of a little bit terrible, but like it plays. You know what I mean? Like it functions, it works. You can sit there, it's not gonna like, at least from my experience, it's not gonna break down, and you know, if you have others that join you in the weird matchmaking system, because honestly, drop and drop out would have been ideal. Like, it could be kind of cool in a squad. It's just like really hard to get like a full group kind of going, and then like also picking like what mission you're doing, because you have to sit there in the tree beforehand, and people are sitting there looking at the menu, and even the menu doesn't really tell you how to join others. And you kind of sit there and you're like, well, you know, like I want to play with others, but it's like, what are they doing for missions? And you know, I guess it shouldn't really matter too much because there's only, you know, like I said, like 9 missions and then some extra stuff. It's just so limited. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so small. And it would have been fine if this was something from, you know, like a previous generation and whatnot, but like, I think there's a bit more expectation now in terms of like content and, you know, at least replayability. And it's like, sure, we picked like a slightly different path, but like, is it really even changing anything at all? By the end of it, you know, you're just going down a slightly different direction to go to the same area. And to me, that just doesn't add anything of like true excitement. And I think you've been kind of seeing it gameplay-wise too. Like, this is one of the levels, and you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it just becomes slightly more grindy and exhausting as you go through it, especially as those enemies get a little bit meatier towards the end where they're spongier, and you're just kind of like, ugh. And then it just kind of like abruptly ends and kind of teases, I don't know, something. It's just like, yeah, it feels like it was almost cut off halfway through or something. Like, I think the biggest thing is I can kind of look at it, and going back to that whole budget thing. Oh, I'm actually gonna die here. That's not good. That's not good at all. I wonder if I got shot from the side. Is that what got me? Teammate! Teammate, come get me. It would be embarrassing to die here. Actually, so embarrassing. But like, it seems like maybe they had like grander plans with this one, and like they just weren't able to like fully realize that concept. And to me, that's such a bummer, because I think there is something here. Wow, that sucked. Like, there is something here, but it's just not very fun. And then, yeah, if you die here, like, what is the point of the checkpoints, really, if you're redoing the mission, basically? I guess it's just to kind of bump up your level, and that it's just, yeah, that's brutal, right? Like, you die and you restart it, and it's just kind of like, just not very good. Yeah, I want to return to the Major Oak. It's just like, it's a bit of a strange package, honestly, where you kind of sit there and you're like, you know, I want this to be a bit more, but it's not really. And then you finish it, and I don't know, like, maybe it'd be interesting to do a higher difficulty. I'm not really too sure, but like, to me, it's just so underwhelming on so many like fronts. It's just so disappointing, and I don't know, like I wasn't necessarily like, honestly, I wasn't expecting anything out of this. I didn't even know about this game until like very, very, very recently, randomly, and I was like, oh, this is coming out, interesting, okay. And then like, you know, you get here and then you start playing it, and you're like, oh, okay, interesting, and then you play more and you're like, nah, this really doesn't hit the mark. As I said though, I love the little puppet shows thing. I think that's cute. It helps the game stand out a little bit. It seems like there was a lot more that they were kind of wanting to go for, and they just weren't able to fully execute on that vision. It's very small in terms of content. Like, it's a quick, decently breezy sort of wait and play. Like, I think some might struggle a bit unless they grind slightly to get some slightly better abilities, but like, I just don't know what's so enticing about this one that would really be like, this is why you would jump in and play this. You know, it's just so limited on content. It's not a really interesting story. The characters are like, okay, they have distinct stuff, but they're just kind of okay characters. Not a lot of detail, and it's just like, it's a very, the same area as that other side level too. it's just not very complex nor interesting, and I think ultimately that to me is a huge disappointment in this